This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For March 2022, it's the AV SuperFriends On Topic. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure with the AV SuperFriends. I hope it's Friday where you are, because it's Friday where I am.
Once again,
it is Friday. My name is Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Justin, Marc, Larry, and Jamie.
Hello.
And on today's show, we're going to discuss the metaverse, but not the one you're thinking of.
What?
And related to that, we have some AV news.
Is it really AV news?
All right, I take it back.
We
have some news.
We just have
some
news.
Technology news. We're going to make it AV related.
Force it.
This article comes from Forbes, which is known for their hard-hitting AV coverage. Link in the show notes below. But so this is the article is JP Morgan opens a bank branch in the metaverse. And then, of course, they do the same parenthetical that I did. They say, but it's not what you think it's for. And this article, Marc, you brought this up. This article is important not because of the content of this article, but because it links to a report that JP Morgan has done about opportunities, business opportunities, financial opportunities in the metaverse.
All the opportunities.
And as we were discussing before the show, most of us can't figure out what that means. So I'm going to turn it over to Marc to explain what the hell is going on.
Well, thanks, Chris. If I sound like Charlie Brown's mom and wah, 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 through this whole thing to many of you, please refer to the report, because I think it's really useful to gain a little bit of insight of what's happening here. And since today's show, we are talking about metaverse and emerging technologies. I think we were going to talk a little bit about like what it is, what it isn't, but I really feel like this report is helpful for a lot of folks. And I will say kind of where this was and what happened. JP Morgan bought some digital space in Decentraland and created a virtualized bank of sorts, I guess would be the one way to look at it. And in this space they posted this report as well. And it's really interesting because it's in technically the metaverse. But I wanted to go in and read a little bit about this report, because I think the JP Morgan definition of metaverse was really well written, I guess, and may help some folks understand kind of what's going on. It's not going to get into the nuts and bolts of kind of what it is, what it isn't, but the language they use in this is really important, because I think it begins to set the stage to maybe see some of the direction that some of the AV pieces that many of us work with may go down, right? So I will take a little bit of this out of a little bit of context, but there's links in the show notes. Go ahead and download it, read it. If you're wondering what the hell's going on, take a moment, read through there. And if you're more confused, stick around, I guess. There's going to be more.
If you're more confused, read it a few more times.
Yeah, just keep reading it, and then eventually you'll
just give up.
Yeah, just walk away. What is the metaverse? The metaverse is a seamless convergence of our physical and digital lives, creating a unified virtual community where we can work, play, relax, transact, and socialize. The metaverse is still early in its evolution, and there is no singular, all-encompassing definition to which people can turn. Themes of what the metaverse is and could be, however, are emerging. A key point is that there is no one virtual world, but many worlds which are taking shape to enable people to deepen and extend social interactions digitally. This is done by adding an immersive, three-dimensional layer to the web, creating more authentic and natural experiences. The metaverse even has the promise of facilitating accessibility from the comfort of the home, breaking down boundaries, and democratizing access to key goods, services, and experience. Now, with that being said, I'm going to set the stage here. Nowhere in there did it mention goggles, Ready Player One, or any of that stuff. Right?
It did, though, at the end.
It kind of did.
So he gave two definitions.
I don't think it did.
The first one was correct, and the second one was wrong.
Yes.
But are you extrapolating the three-dimensional layer of the web?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of.
See, I don't think that has to be goggles.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that is where people start, and that's where
the experience that people have in their heads of what this
that's
means.
where people want to go with this definition, and I think it's wrong, and for reasons we'll discuss on today's show. So,
right.
But continue.
Okay. So, but that's the start. So now, many of you, let's go to the other side of this now. What do we think the generic definition? Justin, I'm looking at you because I think you have you're very opinionated on what you think the metaverse is from the voice of public opinion, we'll say, of like what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some research and I know a little bit about this stuff, and I'm not a naysayer in this. I'm not going against what Marc is saying. There's real value to what the metaverse can be and will be. My problem with all of this is the adoption rate is going to be much slower than what people anticipate due to various social factors of economics and access to different things. I have a lot of people around me that, especially in rural Kentucky, there's people that just worry about sending their kids to school just to get food. And we have this other class of people over here talking about metaverse. So that's my only issue with all of this is it's going to take over. It's going to be awesome and great. Yes, it probably will be, but I think it's going to take a lot of time.
And so, but if you're like, what's the do we have an agreed upon like what we think people believe this really is right now? What we're sensing? I
think it's probably 80-20, where 80% of the people, this is just opinion, obviously, that 80% of the people think it's goggles in 3-dimensional space.
Okay.
That they can go play in, and I'm going to go buy some land next to Snoop Dogg, and when he has a virtual concert at his ranch, that I can just watch it somehow. A lot of, and it's not just made up. The problem is a lot of articles out there are stating these things as fact, and people are reading it, and that's where they're getting information from. So that equates to, in my opinion, why it's going to be a slow adoption, because there's false narratives of what's actually being done in the metaverse. So that's kind of where it gets all the muddy waters, right?
But you're not wrong. People that have that as like their vantage point of it, it's not wrong to start there, right?
It's one aspect of it.
It's one aspect of it, and it's fair, because even in this report that JP Morgan has, the concept of metaverse is not a new one. In many ways, this is a linear progression. Online multiplayer role-playing worlds like The Sims or Second Life have been around for nearly 20 years, with players spending an average of 20 hours, right?
It's brought up in there, and I see it little microcosms even with my kids, right? Is even Roblox or Minecraft, right? These are entire worlds. There's no goggles. There's just a video game, but there's entire worlds, and there's real money being exchanged. And these people are very proud of what they've done and how they share, and they're 10. And so I get it that's this right now definition.
Right. And I think it's easy to go there.
And to tie it back to education, I recently read a report called Connected Learning, where they did research into learning experiences that students are partaking on their own or through faculty pushing them in these directions that are in a digital realm. So they're talking about Minecraft, all these things where students are getting together outside of class and joining these social communities. And I agree that there's going to be a slow adoption, but I think it's going to be a slow adoption with certain groups, and it's just going to drive that equity of the experience even further apart.
I'm kind of with Larry a little bit on that. Like, all of this is real. The money's real. What's happening is real. It's how does it fit in everyone's lives? And maybe they're dealing with it on the back end and don't even know it. If they're, we talked a little bit about, retirement, financial, this, that, the other could be something that is happening behind the scenes that somebody doesn't even know about. But if you have people that have DSL or dial-up currently that pay everything with cash and watch TV with a satellite dish and are completely disconnected to the world, they're mostly unaffected by this. And it's going to take time to weed that population out to make that adoption wider, right? So that's where my time thing comes in.
Sure. And I think, it's easy as an industry. We are right here in technology, right? So this is kind of low-hanging-ish fruit, and we're kind of thrust into this. But I think we get hung up on where we think we fit in this conversation. And it's easy to say, oh, that's the AR, it's the VR, it's the headsets. That sounds like AV. That must be my involvement with this, right?
Yeah.
But I want to take these goggles off for a moment. I literally want to remove the goggles.
Let's not talk about goggles.
Let's not talk about goggles. Let's not talk about that layer of it, because I think this is a really multifaceted conversation. We won't get through every bit of it today, but I do want to bring the pieces that I think are more relevant to the conversation. And I think once we get through the VR headsets and all that stuff, we're really talking about blockchain, right? Is really, I think, where this disruption lies. And it further down in the article, I'll kind of quote this again: blockchain has enabled digital currencies and NFTs. The new methods to transact and own digital goods are allowing creators to monetize their activities through tokens, in addition to monetization, and as a means to exchange value. Token holders can also participate in the platform's governance, vote on decisions. This democratic ownership economy, coupled with the possibility of interoperability, could unlock immense economic opportunities where digital goods and services are no longer captive to a singular gaming platform or brand. Now, that's a lot. Zoom out, understand what that potentially could mean in the classroom. I want to talk about that today a little bit, because I think that's where my perspective on this is the disruption. Get through all that piece of it, and what does it mean? Let's start with the NFT piece of this on the blockchain and how that could potentially disrupt the classroom and the potential. Chris, you and I talked about this. We see some opportunities on the horizon around badging, pieces like that, or even the concept of content ownership, the faculty themselves minting and owning the content and actually using that within the classroom environment. I mean, I'm not hearing a lot of people really talking about that, but I believe that's really where this conversation is going to go.
And I think that's what's most interesting about this is that very thing. I mean, how many times in our little microcosm of this world do we hear lecture capture or Zoom broadcast, right? You're just going to record me and you're going to use my material forever and ever, and you're going to fire me and make money off my material forever and ever. And this even on my look, I am just scratching the surface of this research into this whole world. But I see the benefits of instructors being able to assign their meta tags to their content, and it's theirs. Now the recording always links back to them. It'll be really interesting in research contracts too. When will universities start including in their contracts it says all metaverse research is property of the whatevers? I mean, these have complications that we already kind of get when we program a system. Sometimes they say, well, that program belongs to the school, not to you, because you work here, right?
Yeah, think about it from the other side, though. Flip it over from a student experience. Young students, like we see them probably in elementary school now, high school, they're going to be a little more digital native than any of us ever were.
Yes.
And we start talking about the concept of like wallets and the aggregate of ownership of experience, right? Now think about your resume, and your resume being tied to the blockchain, and all of the pieces, your tokens and coins that you've amassed through all the trainings you're done are provable, verifiable by you as ownership in your experience wallet, right? And then your professors are exchanging that currency through your career as you go through with your education, right? So there's a lot of different nuance here is what this is. It's much larger than just dog coins and all this other weird stuff. That like this, the way this will play out, there's folks thinking about it from simply a university experience being just the transcript, right? You owning that.
My boss recently got his PhD, and he got it in a digital wallet as a token. And now whenever he goes to present, he's required to submit that, which is backed by the university that he went to.
Right. And so we've heard higher education is like, oh, what's the value of a piece of paper? Well, it's no longer the piece of paper. It's a verifiable proof that you have gone through and amassed these skill sets, and here's the currency to back that up, and it's verifiable on the blockchain itself. So there's a little more tangibility, I guess, to that than just a piece of printed paper to back it up. But and that's just, again, one little nuance into this multifaceted piece of it. But Jamie, the piece of the content ownership, I think, is really important as well. You know, just like you had said, the faculty making content and being afraid that they're going to lose ownership of that in the face of the university. Well, this can upend that entire concept, right?
So a couple of weeks ago, you guys talked about FERPA and lecture capture when we were discussing lecture capture. And Jamie, you said that your recommendation is, hey, get a student on camera for a few seconds, which means by Missouri law anyway, because that ain't the law in every state. But by the way that Missouri is currently interpreting the law,
yes,
you have to delete that content.
At the end of the semester, it's done.
But if you have a unique, persistent, and digital identifier tied to that, then you can ensure that only certain people can access it, and you know who has access, is trackable. You don't necessarily have to do that. So I'm curious, how long until one of the big players, a Canvas or a Blackboard or somebody starts integrating this into that, so when you create your post or your video or whatever it is, it automatically creates a blockchain-enabled NFT or something similar to that to give you persistent, unique ownership of things like that. So you are then in control of your content, even if you're creating that content on somebody else's platform, or in the case of our discussion, in a university lecture capture system. But I'm now going to, not only do I own the content presented, I own the actual presentation of that content, because there's now a digital identifier tied to that, which is an intriguing idea from my perspective, because I don't give a crap about the goggles stuff. That's, spoiler, never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Chris. That's the question to ask, is how long will it take to get there? Because my opinion is, you're right, it will get there. How long is that going to take? I was just on a conference call with our CITL group in a training, and every one of the instructors on there talked about how much the students dislike Blackboard because it was not a social engagement, peer type situation. And so all of these things like Blackboard and Canvas and all these other tools that are used in classrooms and education, they have to rethink their entire platform. And how much money and personnel cost is that? But it will get there, or they will die, right? And somebody else will come up, and they were saying how much they love Slack. Maybe Slack is the next thing that adopts something like this, and it just...
God, I hope not.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying as an example, but there's got to be some big change for this to happen.
I don't know. Again, I'm sure there's experts out there, and I have just barely scratched the surface of this wormhole of information. But yeah, you want to waste a few weeks of your life, try to research this.
Yeah.
Get out ahead of it. But what I see in some of these instances, like this particular example you brought up, is that the LMS companies, I completely agree with students and your perspective, is that it is not catered towards the modern
engagement. Yeah, it's not.
Engagement of students. However, that said, that the LMS systems will find a way and work with the universities as part of their deal, is that they'll go ahead and set up those blockchains, and they'll go ahead and set up those tags. They'll go ahead and do that as part of your, just like now, let's oversimplify this now, you can link all these services so that you can kick off your Zoom meeting from within Canvas, and then the recording automatically gets sent to your Panopto, and all this stuff magically happens in the background, and the instructor can't, some of them struggle to even log in, right? But all this stuff happens. So exactly. I think that LMSs will embrace this and force it faster than you think. It's the not LMS, it's the other stuff that I wonder how long that will take.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a wider adoption, like we talked about, from the bottom up, right? As students get older that are younger now, and they start adopting this technology, they're going to start demanding this technology that, hey, I've created this thing, I want to own it, and it's this. That's how it's going to happen quicker. And those people need to get to adulthood and be adopting of this newer technology and understand how flexible and decentralized it can be, which is it's a good thing.
So there's a couple examples I really like to think about here. And there's probably faculty somewhere in each of your schools, and if you're listening to this, you may already know some, that would really push the bounds of this. And I can see a world where we're taking concepts, information, minting those as NFTs into our curriculum and our syllabus, and we're going to put them at very specific locations through our course. And this is the foundation of this is the economics of what happens in a class. It's transactional. The students are getting information and they are doing their work and they're amassing that, right? So understand that transaction and the opportunity that those students can actually go through and amass these actual tokenized versions of this information, and the faculty embedding this into the curriculum. So the proof is you did not do the work until you get to this point and show me that you have done it, and you have the proof that it's happened now, right? And so you each are the owners, and this is actually pretty simple to do right now. You know, through minting and QR, like this is off the shelf.
Faculty are going to do that when that's tied into a larger system and it happens automatically. Marc submitted at 12:03 p.m. and it created a token at that point that is verifiable. That's when it's going to happen.
Right.
And just kind of to Jamie's point and to Marc's point here is, you know, Jamie's looking at all this research as complex. Marc had to spend money to be able to mint stuff. That there's a lot of hurdles there that we see as low hurdles that are really big hurdles for other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be a very steep curve to get into in the immediate right now. Like I'm not, right now is not forever. We have to understand that the time will keep moving forward. Things will get simplified. You know, technology will advance, but there are early adopters now who will own some of this experience and be able to be the champions moving forward. And that's the opportunity. And I think there's the disruptor on this.
I like that example. I do. I think that and even if you break it down to say, it's not necessarily about the grades anymore. It's not, did I get an A, B, C, D, or F? It's or credit
hours. We don't use grades here.
How many credit hours did you get? It's okay. So you're going to be a doctorate of, you know, biomechan, whatever, right? Well, you have to amass tokens, you know, equivalent to whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's as you go. And if it takes you 40 years, at the end of 40 years, you amassed them, therefore you are certified, right? Whatever.
Most of them will throw that out of statute of limitations. They'll give you 7 years.
The whole idea that it's no longer just A's and B's or you got a 90 on this test. The fact that, no, actually you proved that you're worthy. Yeah. Here's your stamp.
So yeah, the version of this that people would understand right now, and most people listening to this show, would be the Avixa RU. Imagine the Avixa RU as an NFT existed in your RU wallet. How many times are you going through fumbling trying to find emails with the shit on it when it came out and trying to upload it?
I just go to the official transcript where I save all that stuff.
Yeah, well, some people are maybe not as organized as you are, Chris.
I know they're not.
So, but think about that as that transaction, right? You're doing this work, you're being rewarded with this token, and so. But then think about what it would mean if there actually were standards approaching higher education where this experience is agreed upon widely, and how disruptive that is for a university. The concept of the student being transient, that they're not necessarily going to stay in your university for 4 years. They're going to go where they can amass those tokens the fastest, and that if as soon as they do it, they're going to move forward. So there's kind of, when we harken back to that existential threat to higher education, you can start to see some of these pressures. The universities have to adapt to be able to make good on that time to degree, and this technology is going to force that about how we do that and start to think about where the students are going to go because they want to have an experience that allows them to get there.
I think that kind of goes away from the learning theory that a lot of the higher ed institutions have adhered to recently. The constructivism, where students are building their own knowledge base, it's not as transactional as that. And so that's an interesting concept to think about, because not only are we uprooting the business side, but we're also uprooting the pedagogical side of higher ed in general, or at least where that we've been.
Yeah, and it's. I'm not saying this is exactly as it's going to roll out. I don't have that kind of crystal ball.
Yeah,
but I can see it now. But with some of the inquiries I'm seeing from folks and what they want to do and how they want to press it, and so I think it's interesting.
The whole point of our conversation today is that that's the bigger metaverse, right? And that we keep on our show, we make fun of them, but we keep seeing all these arguments and articles and Twitter wars about goggles or no goggles. AR is the future, and it's like, well, wait. I mean, this is part of it.
We already litigated that, so
this is part of it. But look, there is more in higher ed technology to the metaverse, and We thought we'd dig
XR.
into it a little bit different.
No,
Yeah,
only
then-
goggles. It's all goggles. You guys are doing it wrong. Yeah, you're right, Jamie. I mean, that's where people focus. I think because it's neato shiny. It's something neat and new and cool. And I've got one at home with my the Facebook Oculus whatever thing, and it's like no one cares.
That's what all the marketing's geared towards too out there. I mean, all the marketing is geared towards
Well,
that,
it's
so
easy to
it instills that
understand.
ideology in
we
everybody's
had somebody
head.
recently bring up that same idea of like, oh, but when the students in classes can put on their goggles and all go to Egypt,
Like,
who gives a
no,
crap?
we're not
First of
doing
all,
that shit.
That's 1991. No one cares. Just, there's other ways to get that same content, and you're not really gaining anything. You're doing an shiny, and you're getting someone else to pay for it at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's right now, that's like we all know how marketing works, right? We've all seen the spec sheets for the 4 billion watt speakers. It's only a 2-inch driver. But there's
20 of them.
Stacked up on top of each other.
But that's what I think we're seeing is that's the money part of it now. That's the part that people understand now. And that's what marketing's hitting, but
there's real money, and there's real money at stake here. And there's risk involved with this, because what if there is a legitimate first mover advantage and universities, Larry, you're doing e-gaming and esports like out there. Many would see that as the fringe, and this is going beyond that, right? And so if you are offering a premium experience that are embracing all these things that these kids want to do, does that whole pedagogical thing even matter? Like they're going to go where they're going to go. And let's face it, budgets are budgets, and we have to go and make things meet by our enabling services, which is the budget that tuition brings in. If we are not meeting what the students are asking for, they will go somewhere else. And they will
it goes back to that saying that I hate, where student preference drives outcomes. Like, yeah, it does. It's just not the outcomes I tend to be focused on all the time.
Right. Yeah, and what's really interesting is that if the students are driving this, and right now they're living in some of these worlds, and they do have crypto money.
Oh yeah,
and some of them can pay for college with their crypto money.
They sure can.
And when does the university go, okay, we'll dabble in that. Let's go.
I want some of that money. Give me them ducats.
They're already doing it.
So,
like, how many of your universities have like the food program where the students pay their money and they're turned into like food currency, and they can only spend that at the dining location?
I actually had that 20 years ago.
Right. It's not new. It's just economy.
not. I think it's the flip of it, though.
Right.
I think that's like the university's used to being the bank of university cafeteria.
That's all that is.
They're
is a
not
checking
used to
savings
being
account.
the consumer. Like, wait, you want to pay me in Bitcoin? And when I'm done with this class, I want a token on my thing, so that when I transfer to the other school next semester, it already shows that I took civics, and I don't have to take it again.
Nobody spends Bitcoin, by the way. You hodl it.
Well, I just look. I told you I was still pretty ignorant on this whole thing, but I'm seeing that there's some faster moving parts of this that they're intimidating. Let's face it, it's intimidating, and actually, it is a lot easier for a lot of people in our position to go goggles. It is because it's easy.
It's easy out, right?
We understand that because it's from the 90s.
But it's a big. Please. It's a huge ball. It's like the weird wiffle ball with all the holes, and you're taking a peek through to see the inside. But when you do that, you only get that singular vantage point. But there's a whole lot more going on in there that maybe you do need the goggles to see through it to get in, to have a perspective. But I think it's a wonderful conversation, and there's a lot of elements that will change how we work, where we work, how we transact with that work. That is a huge disruption, and so. You could put your head in the sand and say it's not a thing, but these big businesses that are putting billions of dollars into it are going to say otherwise.
So I think as I'm digging around here and thinking about this, I think where this sort of stuff is going to show up is from places we didn't expect it. Microsoft is going to add NFT capability to their Microsoft Word in the next version. It'll be something like that. And then you go to open a document and you don't have authorization to do this, or it can track whoever's opened it all over the place, or whatever it might be. It's going to be things like that. It's going to sneak in sideways almost immediately. I would guess within the next year or two, we're going to start seeing these things come in, and then it's going to reach a critical mass where these things are now so ubiquitous, even though they didn't all come in at once. it's going to be commonplace, and it's going to be, your Kalturas and your Canvases and whatever are going to add it to their content management system. We're going to see it from big vendors, your Extrons and your Crestrons and your Everts and your QSCs, adding it to your QSys, adding it to their content streamability sort of thing, so it can capture that stuff and export as a H.265 file. It'll be things like that, little bits and pieces and drips and drabs. Then all of a sudden, we're going to realize 3 years from now, all this stuff is all out there. All this stuff does interact and work together and kind of talk with each other, but it's not going to be goggles.
No.
I don't know.
Damn it, why didn't I invest earlier? That's really what it's going to boil down to.
Do some research. It's out there. Go do some blockchain research, and it's coming. Like they're not going to put it back in the bottle at this point. The genie's out, and so do yourself a favor. Go become more knowledgeable on it for sure. Anybody else have anything you want to throw in there?
Don't hold your breath. It's going to take a while.
I have one comment here that I want to run.
The goggles do nothing.
They don't do anything.
Close on that.
But let us know though. We want to hear about it.
Amazon order for goggles.
So if you know somebody who's deep into it and they're doing it in classrooms, I want to know about it. Send us some information. Send us an email. We will be going back into this, I'm sure, in the future.
I'm watching out for that to show up in the WKU classrooms for sure.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Maybe
on the network.
30 to 50 years.
Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.